If there's one thing this podcast loves, it's ships.
Oh, no, Sean's not here.
And World War II.
Are you doing Bismarck?
And Medleys. So this week, we'll cover 3 shorter stories that touch on all of our favourite topics. We'll start with the sinking of a ship that has a place close to our hearts as the sister of the Titanic. Then we'll move into the Pacific theatre of the Second World War with a particularly grisly battle. Finally, to wrap it all up, we'll combine the two with a World War II sinking of a battleship that will leave you considering never entering the ocean again. This week on Cheeky Tales, it's a medley of all our favourites. Starting now. We're back.
We were back last fortnight.
We're back.
All right. Jesus.
How are you, boy?
Good boy. How are you?
Yeah. Oh, big change since last time we recorded.
Oh, I know, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't seen you in
minutes. I didn't see you when you walked over there for a little bit.
I feel like I haven't seen you in seconds.
Yeah, I love how we record the second episode and we just got nothing to talk about at the start, so we just get into it. My episodes have no intro.
We got something to talk about that we never mentioned in the last episode.
Mm.
The assassination attempt.
Yeah.
That's 4 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
No,
to us, it's today.
No, it's 2 weeks ago.
Was it today?
Yes, today.
Yeah. For us, that's very fresh news. For you, it's pretty stale. So I think we can all say congratulations, President Trump.
Your victory.
There's just no way that this doesn't end with him being president now. He's going to use it to martyr himself.
There's no need for that kind of action. I don't care who it is or how much you disagree with their policies or procedures or whatever. There's no need for that.
It is stupid is the only way to put it. We just discovered what the source of the noise was at the end of last episode. If you heard us going, what's that noise? That's what that was. It was John's laptop sparking a little bit. Is it sparking or is it just...
No, I think it's just the plastic in there.
Yeah, okay. Shooting someone only serves to make their ideals more solidified in the minds of those that support them.
Yep.
So even though you shouldn't do it anyway, it just makes them more powerful to do that.
And I'm very happy that Trump is
alive
and safe.
So lucky. And condolences obviously to the family of the guy that was killed that wasn't the shooter, or the person that was killed. I don't know who it was, but just not good. Not good.
You had an interesting reaction to seeing the story.
What was that?
Is it real?
Yeah. I immediately saw the photos of it and went,
oh, that's AI. Real? That's AI generated.
Yeah. But that's, you have to ask that now. Is that real?
Yeah.
Because I immediately zoomed in on the hands. I was like, what's the hands that are in the photo? Are they normal?
Do they have 5 fingers?
Yeah,
or 3?
Zoomed in at the ears and stuff. It is interesting that has very quickly become my reaction to seeing anything.
Your default.
Yeah. Because I've seen plenty of AI created stuff now, and at first glance, it looks fine. But then you take a second look, you're like, something's weird there.
I just thought your reaction was interesting. Because I originally thought, maybe there's been a noise and the Secret Service has tackled him and that's when he's got injured and that's why he's bleeding. But no, it's like the first shot that rings out, he grabs his ear.
Yeah.
And then we discovered something later, another photo. It seems to be a photo of a bullet hole in his coat. And you can see he grabs his ear, obviously, because that's where he was hit. And then you must be able to feel the bullet go through the coat and you can see his arm come down straight away. So very lucky. But yeah, just no need.
America. F yeah. And yeah, I do.
This is not the first time America's had to deal with this. You've had one assassinated president, one survived assassination by being...
There's a Kennedy running for president. Robert Kennedy Jr. is running for president. Yeah. That is a JFK's nephew.
Wow. And then who was the one that was shot in the chest? Not Truman.
Reagan?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. It's just like, what are you doing?
You had the shoe at Bush.
The eggs at
the Australian bloke.
Kevin Rudd.
Yeah. It was inches away from being another one of those like things that you talk about forever.
Well, we just discussed Kennedy 60, 70 years ago. Like it was, like you said, it was millimeters from just a day in history. Like crazy.
I also love how stale this is going to be by the time it comes out.
It's 2 weeks old.
Maybe I should cut this and just put it in front of the other one. People will barely notice.
Whatever.
Anyway,
let's talk about some ship. Ship, yeah. Let's get ship-faced.
Yeah.
There was no pun. That was a good pun.
That was a really good one.
Yeah.
I did write this episode, and while I was thinking about it, I'm like, Sean's going to hate this. It's going to be so funny. And he's not even here.
He's not even here.
So this one's for you, Sean.
RIP to a real one.
He's still here. He's just in Adelaide. Oh, rip. So let's go through some shorter ones. So the first one I have titled, good one, boy.
I keep smashing the microphone.
First one I have titled, Titanic's sister meets a similar fate.
Is this the Britannic?
It is the Britannic, which, as we all know from a show favourite episode, the Titanic was the third and final of the Olympic-class ships built for the White Star Line.
Not a series of encyclopedias either. It's the Britannica.
It is the Britannica, isn't it? Yeah. The keel for the Britannic was laid down on 30th of November 1911, some 5 months before the sinking of the Titanic. While originally designed to be very similar to the Olympic and Titanic, there was obviously a need for some redesign after the sinking. With the beam of the ship increased to fit a double hull around the engines and boilers, 6 of the watertight bulkheads being raised to higher above the waterline, and a gantry on the outside to facilitate the powered launch of lifeboats. I'm guessing that you're about to say, did they change anything?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're building this ship and its sister ship
goes down.
Yeah. Do you stop?
Yeah.
Or
I think they
at least
did
you
pause.
you make some changes. You think about it. Well done, 1911s.
Yeah. This is before the 30s.
Yeah.
The outcome of the changes was that the Britannic would be able to stay afloat with 6 compartments flooded, compared to Titanic's 4, and all lifeboats could be launched from either side of the ship. So I think it had this system where like they were stored both sides, but it could pick them up from either side and dump them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, well done. Well done. You had a problem. At least you made some changes. Wasn't just like, it won't happen again. And then it happens again.
This one's unsinkable.
Yeah. They had the dry run.
Well,
the wet
wasn't
run.
really dry, was it?
No, the wet run.
It would take just over 2 years before it was launched, eventually launching on 26th of February 1914. Before the fit-out could be completed, a little thing called World War I broke out, with civil contracts for fit-outs, with civil contracts for fit-outs would slow to a crawl. That's a very poorly written sentence. I can understand why I flubbed it. Contracts for civilian ships basically just stopped.
When did you write this? At 11 o'clock last night?
No, this was actually written months ago.
Oh.
Yeah, that's probably why I don't remember much of it. Essentially, they had rations on basically everything. So all the raw materials were hard to come by. Eventually, Britannic would be joined by Olympic in Belfast and sat waiting for what was to come. So they couldn't finish the fit out. Olympic was like, yeah, we obviously can't do voyages anymore, so we'll just dump them in a shipyard somewhere and wait.
And yeah, okay, that was the company name too, wasn't it?
No, that was the White Star Line.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, the Olympic class of vessels.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
A large number of civilian vessels were being requisitioned by the Navy for use in the war, but ships of the size of the Britannic were hard to operate and so weren't requisitioned immediately. In 1915, the Britannic would complete trials and be prepared for entrance into service with 4 weeks' notice. Passenger liners were starting to be used as troop transports for the Gallipoli campaign, and as the casualties started to mount up, a need for hospital ships was growing. Olympic would find its way into use as a troop transport, and Britannic would be requisitioned on 13th of November 1915 as a hospital ship. It would be painted white with a big old red cross and green stripe, and it would be fitted out with 3,309 beds with wards and operating rooms installed throughout.
That's probably bigger than some current day hospitals.
That is a heckin' big hospital.
Yeah.
Medical equipment would be fitted on 12th of December 1915, and it would leave for service on the greatest day of the year, 23rd of December.
How to doss yourself?
I didn't dox anything. What are you talking about?
Okay. Just
Britannic would
2
spend...
days before Christmas, whatever.
It's a irrelevant date, but it's the best day of the year.
Yeah, okay.
Britannic would spend time bouncing around Europe before settling in Greece for a time. What?
I'm not saying a thing.
You didn't... What are we talking about?
23rd of December.
It's mathematically the greatest day of the year.
Oh, okay. 2, 3, 1, 2. Not really.
2, 3, 2, 1, whatever. Britannic would spend time bouncing around Europe before settling in Greece for a time, eventually returning to England to be stationed off the coast of the Isle of Wight. The end of its military service would be on the 6th of June 1916, where it would be returned to Belfast to be converted back to a passenger liner. Halfway through the process, it would be recalled to service, being converted back to a hospital ship and entering service on 24th of September 1916.
Not a waste of resources at all.
I know. They like half teared it apart. Why not just leave it and wait?
Until the war's over.
Yeah. They must have had to pay them to use the ship or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Contract run out.
After a few more trips through the Middle East, the Britannic would eventually find itself leaving Southampton for Lemnos in Greece on 12th of November 1916. There were 1,066 people aboard, and the ship would stop in Naples to fill with coal. After a storm delayed them, they set sail again and were sailing through the Key Channel in the Aegean Sea of Greece. Aegean, thank you. Sea of Greece. Aegean Sea of Greece.
That never happens on this episode.
No,
they correct you.
Yeah, that's weird. On the morning of 21st of November 1916. At 8:12 a.m., the ship would hit a mine laid by a German U-boat and would be rocked by the resulting explosion. Doctors and nurses in the dining hall raced to their stations, but those towards the stern felt a much less powerful bump, thinking instead they'd hit a small boat. The captain, Captain Bartlett.
Charter boat?
What charter boat?
That's
Great.
only a Queensland thing. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, because it's an RACQ ad.
Yeah.
Did they not make like an RACV version? Or
No,
an
we were talking to friends of ours in South Australia and we brought up that because something hit something and we're like, charter boat? And they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
We showed them the ad, like,
Yeah.
we don't know what this is.
Yeah. I love stuff like that where everyone's like, oh, yeah, this is super common. Everyone gets it. And you go anywhere else in the world and they don't
No
get
one
it
gets
at all.
it. No.
I
I was just trying to think. There was something else that Australians do that the rest of the world has no idea. The hip hip hoorays, I think,
Yes.
at the end of the birthday song. Right. Anyway, irrelevant.
The captain, Captain Bartlett, was on the bridge and would immediately recognize what was happening.
Good name.
Yeah. 4 watertight compartments were breached and filling fast. And so he would order the watertight doors closed and would send a distress signal to nearby ships. The antenna had been broken by the explosion, and so while they could send a signal, they couldn't hear anything in reply.
Oh, okay, so they at least could. I was going to say, what is with these ships and not being able to communicate? Because the Titanic's communication was broken at the time.
No, they pissed off the other ship.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, the one that was like really close and could have saved everyone, they pissed them off earlier in the night and they just went, well, see ya, good night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They turned theirs off. Like, we're not dealing with this anymore. Right. It's probably happened way more than you'd think, like communication issues back in the day, or just.
Yeah, wait till the third story.
Okay.
So yeah, they had to assume that nobody was coming to save them. They would prepare the lifeboats, but at this stage wouldn't need them as only 5 of the watertight compartments were known to be flooding. Remember, it had to be 6 on this one. Unfortunately, the door between the boiler room 5 and 6 was damaged and no longer watertight. And so a 6th compartment was flooding. So between the 5th and 6th compartments, a door was open. Still, Britannic wouldn't have sunk with 6 being breached, as it had been redesigned to be able to float with 6. Disastrously, nurses had been leaving portholes open along the lower decks to ventilate the wards, which was obviously against policy. And so as the ship lowered in the water, they dropped below the waterline and started filling more than 6 compartments with water, dooming the ship.
I mean, it's a pretty easy mistake to make.
Yeah, but it's one of those like, it's really obvious as soon as it happens.
It's against policy, but you can probably understand if they're in the wards, they've got war wounded.
And this is no air conditioning or anything.
There's war wounded. Probably a lot of blood. It probably smells pretty bad.
Yeah.
They probably, they want to get some fresh air in. So.
Yeah. It makes sense when you put it like that.
Fly screens on a submarine.
It would take only 10 minutes for the Britannic to be at the same point in the sinking process as the Titanic had been after an hour.
Ooh.
And Bartlett decided to make a decisive move. With Key Island nearby, he would order the ship to gun it for land to try and beach the ship in shallower water, closer to shore.
It's pretty reasonable.
The starboard list made it difficult to use the rudder, and regardless, the steering gear had been knocked out by the explosion, and so the propeller shafts would need to be powered at different speeds to compensate.
Okay, much like a plane, if you've got a failing thing in a plane,
no rudder. Yep.
you can turn and that with different engine speeds and stuff, right? Yeah. Well, this is all making sense. Seems like he's doing the right
some
job.
Smart moves.
Yep.
The crew were assembled on deck, and with the quickly sinking ship, they began to fear they wouldn't be able to launch the lifeboats if it got any worse.
So get the buckets out and start.
While Bartlett was making the decision to stop the engines, the crew were losing their cool and launched 2 lifeboats before the order was given. By this point, the propellers were partially surfaced due to the bow of the Britannic sinking faster, and as the lifeboats tried to roll away, they were sucked towards the propellers.
That's not a good thing.
Completely destroyed, churning those on board into chum, killing 30 people in the process.
Why did you have to say it like that?
But not Violet Jessup, who had survived the Titanic sinking as well, who was quoted as saying, "The propellers were having their little joke with anything in their way. Though hands were lowering boats mechanically, eyes were looking with unexpected horror at the debris and red streaks all over the water."
I know where you're going with this episode now.
Yeah.
Because you've mentioned Violet Jessup.
Jessup had been on one of the lifeboats and had stayed in the lifeboat until the very end as it was sucked towards the propeller, eventually being dragged under and being bonked with the propeller, but somehow managing to survive, being rescued by a later lifeboat. She would describe the scene in the water while she floated as human flotsam. So she went under and got bonked on the head.
Yeah.
It's not clear if she got bonked by the propeller or whether she got bonked by a bit of the boat.
Or a body.
Yeah, but it's a much better story if it's the propeller.
Mm.
Eventually, Bartlett was able to stop the engines completely and 35 lifeboats were launched. Bartlett eventually felt the sinking had slowed and so ordered the engines started again to make for land. The forward motion would cause the sinking to increase again though, and eventually he had to give up and order the full evacuation of the ship. It would take just 55 minutes to slip beneath the waves from the time of hitting the mine. When Britannic sunk, she would be the largest ship lost in World War I and the world's largest sunken passenger ship still in one piece.
Okay. Yeah, because the Titanic broke up.
Into 2, yeah. And also they didn't really know where it was, so they didn't know. Yeah. Due to considerably higher temperature, 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and a much faster arrival time for rescue vessels, only the 30 people killed by the propeller would perish in the sinking.
Ooh, it's still very gruesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've had a couple of gruesome episodes
in a row. Yeah. The wreck would be discovered in 1975 by famed underwater explorer
60 years later.
Jacques Cousteau.
Really?
Under just 122 meters of water. It's like apparently it's a difficult dive site because there's quite high currents there.
Yep. What's the shark population there?
Not sure. Interesting foreboding.
Oh, I know the other story you're telling now.
So that's the Britannic. Just imagine you're like, oh man, can't believe I got to the first lifeboat. Oh, I'm going to be so safe. Hang on a minute. Why are we going backwards? Guys?
Dunk, 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 dunk,
Yeah.
dunk. Ugh.
How scary would that be? And there's nothing you can do.
Have you seen the Mythbusters episode where they test that theory? I mean, it's different from...
Is it that theory or the one about being sucked under by a boat that goes down?
Being sucked under by the boat. As the boat goes under, like the drag of the water sucking you under. Busted that theory. But getting pulled into the blades as they're turning, that
definitely can happen.
Yeah.
And did. Story 2.
It reminds me too of, I know it's a movie, Pearl Harbor, in the movie adaptation of Pearl Harbor with...
Haven't seen it.
Kate Beckinsale and Ben Affleck. As one of the, I think it's the Oklahoma, as it's turning over, like they're jumping off. And you just see one of the guys, and then he hits the propeller and he seems like, boom. Again, it's movie magic. It's not real, but that's another awful story, the Oklahoma, with the people being trapped inside the hull.
Yeah.
And they had They were trapped in there. They had closed off all the doors and all that kind of stuff. So there was no more water coming in. But as the rescuers cut the hull to get them out, that let air in, which also let the water come through. So maybe the doors weren't shut, but the air pocket had stopped water from entering. And when they opened it up, it let the air out, which let the water in. And unfortunately, those people drowned.
Ugh. Why would they think that would work?
I guess they thought the doors were shut because there was no more water
even
coming in.
If they were shut, if you cut into it, water's going to come in.
No, that part, the Oklahoma had fully capsized. And so the hull was in the air. And so these people were...
But if it was in the air and they cut into it, then the water wouldn't go up higher than the water line.
I don't know what happened. It's just what happened.
And we're not going to research it because we don't have Sean. So work that one out, buddy.
It could also just be something from the movie. I'm sure it was
it sounds like something
a real part of the story. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Story 2. Uh-oh. Maybe we shouldn't go in the water. Now, this story...
Is it the shark one?
No.
Okay.
Now, this story comes straight out of the Guinness Book of World Records.
Okay. All right.
During World War II, Burma, now known as Myanmar, would be the scene of one of the most horrific battles ever recorded. Ramree Island would be the scene, and the two sides would be the Japanese, who were occupying the island in an attempt to rid it of British control, and the British, who were trying to do what Britain did in those days and continue occupying an area they had colonised.
Shots fired.
I have actually not got my whole episode here, so I need to go get my other laptop. It's not synced.
Please stand by.
Okay. Well, that was scary.
I know what you're doing. You're just trying to pad your episode out a bit.
Oh, yeah, because this will all stay in for sure, yeah. So what just happened there was that there was a syncing error between the two, and the older version of the file was on that laptop instead of this one.
What was it syncing about?
It was syncing over the Britannic. So we'll kick it back in. In 1945, the British were attempting to battle their way to recovering control of the island. And on 19th of February that year, they forced the Japanese back into a 10-mile-long swamp on Ramree Island. There were reportedly 1,000 Japanese soldiers forced into the swamp. And while it would seem to be the perfect place to hide and regroup like the jungles of Vietnam were to the Viet Cong, there would be some unexpected inhabitants of the swamp that would ruin the evening for the Japanese. Crocodiles. As the story goes, the British and Indian soldiers would camp outside the swamp and hear the outcome of what went down for the Japanese soldiers. I'll let the words of famed naturalist and veteran of the Burma campaign, Bruce Wright, paint the picture for us. That night was the most horrible that any member of the motor launch crews ever experienced. The scattered rifle shots in the pitch-black swamp, punctuated by the screams of wounded men crushed in the jaws of huge reptiles, and the blurred, worrying sound of spinning crocodiles made a cacophony of hell that has rarely been duplicated on Earth. At dawn, the vultures arrived to clean up what the crocodiles had left. Of about 1,000 Japanese soldiers that entered the swamps of Ramree, only about 20 were found alive.
Jeez, I have heard of that story before. Yeah.
Throughout the night, the men obviously heard horrible things, and the crocodiles had a big dinner. The attack would be the largest mass feeding event on record for crocodiles.
Who's keeping track of that?
Yeah, I know, right? What a weird thing to know. Yeah. Numbering roughly 900 dead.
Oh.
Multiple books would be written that detailed the event, which is the source of the quote I just read from Bruce Wright. The Guinness Book of World Records would even include the event in its 1968 edition. There's only one problem. The crocodile attack on Ramree Island is not possible.
Oh, no crocodiles there.
There's crocodiles.
Yeah.
Problem 1. None of the writers of accounts were actually on the island. Bruce Wright is the source of most of the accounts, with many others writing their accounts off his. While Bruce was in Burma, he was not on the island on the day of the alleged attack. While all other accounts in his book, Wildlife Sketches Near and Far, are first-hand, The one about the Ramree Island attack was written from stories told by his friends. Womp womp. So that one, he just got told by other people.
Mhm.
Everything else in his book is his words.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Problem 2. There wouldn't be enough crocodiles there to eat 900 people. When you really think about it, Ramree Island is just that, an island. There isn't enough large mammal life to support the number of crocodiles that would be required to eat that many people. What would they eat when there wasn't 1,000 soldiers running around?
Other crocodiles?
Then how would they sustain their population?
I mean, crocodiles can swim.
If there's 1,000 crocodiles, there would have to be 1,000 crocodiles to eat.
Yeah, okay.
Problem 3. It wasn't 900 killed by crocodiles, even in the story. If you were listening closely, Wright's story didn't even claim that all the men were killed by crocodiles.
Yeah, there's 20 left alive.
It stated that there was rifle fire, screams, and that vultures circled the area in the morning. The fact is, only 10 to 15 people died by crocodile when crossing a creek, with the rest dying in the gunfight before and during, and only 500 Japanese soldiers were killed total.
Mhm.
Those 500 mostly died from dehydration and exposure, as well as lack of food. So, yeah, this like very famous story didn't happen.
Okay.
Guinness Book of World Records, do your research better.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah. That story too.
It reminds me of, I'm going to have to look it up, but it's on topic for what we're talking about. There's a ship that sunk and the survivors were...
Well, how about you shut your mouth? Because story 3, Jaws might not make you scared of the ocean, but this should. We're staying in World War... That's so good that you did that. We're staying... Actually, no, I will tell the story, but that's so funny. We're staying in World War II for this story, but this time we're on a boat.
I'm on a boat.
The USS Indianapolis, which is what you were just about to reference, was a heavy cruiser in the US Navy during World War II. It was operating in the Pacific Fleet and had taken part in New Guinea and the Aleutian Islands. By 1945, though, it was involved in a top-secret mission to deliver some uranium for a little boy that would be dropped on Hiroshima a little while later. So yeah, it did that. It dropped all the uranium and other parts off and then would be heading to the Philippines for a training exercise.
Cheeky verse. You're tying in ships in World War II with...
I'm doing lots of tying in. I did the Britannic as well.
One of my other episodes, which is the lost nuclear weapon, which is still just absolutely batshit crazy.
It would have the Indianapolis would have a 1,195 crewmen on board at 15 minutes past midnight on the morning of 30th of July. That's right. This episode releases on the 79th anniversary of this event.
Oh, nice.
Things were calm for the men inside, right up until the moment it wasn't, when 2 torpedoes fired from the Japanese submarine I-58 hit the bow and amidships. The ship would take massive damage, and with all the additional weight from the extra guns added throughout the war, would immediately start listing heavily to one side. After just 12 minutes, the Indianapolis would flip completely over before the stern would rise and the ship would sink bow first into the depths. 300 men would die in that moment, going down with the ship. The remainder of the crew would be plunged into the water with very few lifeboats and life jackets, leaving them to float in the water unassisted. From here, things would only get worse for those dunked into the water.
And this was at night time too, did you say? Yep.
15 minutes past midnight, they're suddenly in the water.
Yep.
That is terrifying to begin with. I do not ever want to be in the ocean at night.
And now imagine, it's super, super dark.
It'd be pitch black.
If there's any lights from the ship, or if the ship's already gone, or if the power plant in the ship's failed.
12 minutes, so down it went.
Yeah, so there's no light at all. Only the light of the moon and the stars.
It was one of the things they said in the Titanic sinking was that the power stayed on until it was basically just about to go under. And then it was pitch black. Yeah, because it was a moonless night as well. Whoa, scary. The first deaths after the sinking would come from those engulfed in the oil spat out by the engines as the Indianapolis was sinking.
Okay. Just drowned people because the oil come to the surface and couldn't swim in it, or?
Yeah, think about what happens to all the animals in oil spills.
Yeah, gets clogged up. Yeah, okay.
They would find themselves overwhelmed by the oil sticking to them and making it hard to breathe. Others would be overcome by drinking the seawater after baking in the scorching sun all day.
Okay, so this is now a period of time. Yeah, you think
I've skipped an entire paragraph that explains that.
Okay.
It would take 3.5 days before the Navy would even learn that the ship was missing. It was presumed at this time that a ship that size would arrive on time, or that they would report that they wouldn't. So they would send out a distress signal or say they were going to be late.
Yep.
It would take a bomber flying over the location of the sinking and spotting survivors to find them.
No time for sending a distress message when the ship's gone in 12 minutes.
Yep. And probably lost power very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
All capable rescue boats and planes would be sent to the location immediately, and the survivors would be found to be experiencing extreme dehydration from the heat of the days and hypothermia from the cool of the night.
Yeah, you think being in water dehydration is the least of your problems. You cannot drink seawater.
You cannot.
It makes you hallucinate.
There's that Simpsons bit where he's like, they're out at sea, and he goes, "What's that saying? Water, water everywhere. So let's all have a drink." Like, don't do that. Don't drink seawater.
No, I think it dehydrates you quicker.
Yeah, because you're ingesting a whole bunch of salt.
Yep.
Men would be those in the water would be experiencing extreme desquamation after being in the salt water for close to 4 days.
Desquamation?
So it's where your skin goes all like flaky and starts falling off.
Oh,
because you've been in salt water.
Yeah.
The first deaths after the sinking would come from those engulfed in oil by being banned and spitting the oil out, whatever. Others, I've said that bit already.
Yeah, okay.
Others would be overcome after drinking salt water, said that as well. Others would simply drown after becoming exhausted from treading water for so long.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because
3.5 days?
You've got to tread. You reckon you could just on your back and float?
I did it for 5 minutes in school. I don't think I could do it for 3 days.
Yeah.
I'm dying in this situation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gone. Even these were not the worst of it, though, as the blood in the water from so many injured men would attract the last thing you want in the ocean: sharks. Just hours after the sinking, hundreds of sharks would be drawn to the area by the blood. They would start picking off the dead and then move on to the injured men, dragging them under and eating them. Once the dead and injured were gone, they would move on to attacking the remaining survivors. One guy said that he looked under the water and saw dozens swimming around him.
Yeah, that's just the feeling of impending doom.
Mm-hmm. Like you just know.
Yeah.
They could just come get you at any moment. This would go on for the majority of the time people were in the water, eventually leading to the death of up to 150 men. This would be, and still is, the largest shark attack in history. Eventually, only 316 people would be rescued, with the remaining 879 either going down with the ship or succumbing to the elements or sharks.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. It would be the largest single ship loss of life in the US Navy's history. The wreckage would eventually be found by a search team funded by Microsoft's co-founder Paul Allen in 2017 at a depth of 5.5 kilometers.
Oh, that's a long way down.
It
compared to the
is.
120 meters of the last one.
Yeah. The captain would be court-martialed and found guilty of hazarding the ship by failing to zigzag. However, would eventually be exonerated in the year 2000 after it was found that the Navy was partially to blame for not warning him of a submarine in the area. And he was also the only captain to be court-martialed for the loss of the ship, despite many others being lost during the war.
Yeah. So what? Because he wasn't zigzagging, because the process is to zigzag when there's...
The policy was that you would zigzag in the water everywhere.
In case a torpedo was coming for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So easier to dodge a torpedo if you're zigzagging.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that shark one's terrifying.
Yeah, just imagine you get dunked in the water in the middle of the night in a war with 800 other men with 12 minutes notice.
And it's overnight too, so the sharks were attacking at night time too. So pitch black, bloke next to you just disappears.
Goes under.
Yep.
Yeah. And like, you might not even have time to scream to warn anyone. So like some guy eventually in the morning was just like, oh, there's sharks here. And then it was on.
Yeah, jeez.
Mm. And sharks can smell blood from a long way away.
It's kilometers, I believe.
Yeah. So they must have been like relatively near an island or something.
1/4 of a mile.
Hmm. That's a long way.
It's a long way.
Yeah. Horrific story. It still gets talked about today. The article that I was reading about it was actually from Channel 9 News.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in 2020 because it was the 75th anniversary.
Anniversary?
Mm.
Yeah. So, 70th anniversary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, 75th. 2020.
Didn't you say this was the
1945.
Didn't you say this was the
79th anniversary.
Okay, nice.
Is it?
Did it say what type of sharks they were? Or all different types of sharks?
Yeah, they were like white tip bites or something. I don't know.
White tipped bites.
There was tiger sharks involved as well.
Oh, you don't want to mess with tiger sharks. White tipped bites. I searched that and I got white-tailed spider.
It wasn't a spider. I'll tell you that. Tell you that one for free. Where's the... Here we go. Where are they? Where's the shark type?
Boy.
What? That was funny. Shut up.
Have you got more? Or is that it?
That's the third story. That's the end.
So you mentioned Violet Jessup earlier.
It was oceanic white-tip shark species. Tiger sharks may also have been involved. Violet Jessup. Yes.
Survived the RMS Titanic.
And the Britannic.
She was also on the Olympic.
Mm-hmm. When it ran into something, yeah.
When
she was on them in sequence too. Like on the Olympic, it crashed. She went, I'm going to go to the Titanic. It sunk. She went to the Britannic in the war. It sunk.
So 1911, she worked for White Star. So it makes sense she was on all three ships.
Mm.
But yeah, she was on the Olympic when it left Southampton and collided with British warship, the HMS Hawke.
Mm.
No fatalities.
No. But that was the incident that caused the Titanic to be delayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And despite the damage, the ship was able to make it back to port without sinking.
Mm.
But yeah, she was on that one when it had a bit of a whoopsie.
Had a whoopsie. Whoopsie doodles.
And then, it was on the Titanic and then on the Britannic.
Mm.
So, yeah, just...
I think there was also a cat that was on a whole bunch of sinkings.
Unsinkable Sam.
Yeah.
Let's have a quick look at Unsinkable Sam.
Yeah, he survived a bunch of sinkings. What have you done? Huh? Survived being homeless?
Oscar, known by his nickname Unsinkable Sam, or by the Germanized spelling of his name Oscar, which is Oskar, was a ship's cat who purportedly served during World War II with both the Kriegsmarine and the Royal Navy and survived the sinking of 3 ships.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because he was on a German ship that sunk. The British scooped him up and then he became a British cat.
He was on the Bismarck, which is a story that I want to do because it's a favourite ship of mine. It's an incredible ship. So he was a black and white patch cat. Where's Ollie? Very much similar to your Ollie and my Kylo. And he was on the Bismarck when it was sunk. The British scooped him up, took him aboard the HMS Cossack.
Get on here.
He served on the Cossack for a few months as the ship carried out convoy escort duties in the Mediterranean and North Atlantic Ocean. On the 24th of October 1941, Cossack was escorting a convoy from Gibraltar to Great Britain when she was severely damaged by a torpedo fired by a U-boat.
Mm.
The initial explosion had blown off 1/3 of the forward section of the ship, killing 159 crew. However, Oscar survived this too and was subsequently brought to the shore establishment in Gibraltar. The crew were transferred to the destroyer, the HMS Legion. After that, he was on the HMS Ark Royal. Now nicknamed Unsinkable Sam, the cat was soon transferred to the aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal, which coincidentally had been instrumental in the destruction of the Bismarck along with the Cossack. However, Sam was to find no better luck here when returning from Malta on the 14th of November 1941. The ship was torpedoed by another U-boat. Attempts were made to tow the Ark Royal to Gibraltar, but the inflow of water made this task futile, and so it rolled over and sank 30 miles from Gibraltar.
And did they save Sam?
The slow rate at which the ship sank meant that all but one of the crew could be saved, so only one death.
God, imagine being that bloke.
Yeah, I know, right?
That sucks.
The survivors, including Sam, who had been found clinging to a floating plank by the crew of a motor launch.
At this point, the cat must be like, come on, guys.
And was described as angry but quite unharmed. He was transferred to HMS Lightning and the same HMS Legion which had rescued him from the Cossack.
Do you want to be on the ship with him? Because obviously people survive when they sink, but he's on ships that sink all the time.
The Legion would be sunk in 1942 and the Lightning was sunk in 1943. I don't believe Sam was on them at that time, but the loss of the Ark Royal proved the end of Sam's shipborne career. He was transferred first to the offices of the Governor of Gibraltar and then sent back to the United Kingdom, where he saw out the remainder of the war living in a seaman's home in Belfast called the Home for Sailors. Sam died in 1955. There you go. So yes, the Bismarck is a great story. And then, he ended up on the ship that I believe the swordfish fighter was launched from that sunk the Bismarck.
Right. Well, there you go. A little bonus tale.
Yeah.
Unsinkable Sam.
Unsinkable Sam. We just need Ollie to actually pop up because
he's not coming out. Apparently he is today, though.
There was another person who'd survived 3 consecutive sinkings. Maybe another time.
I think it was like the unsinkable Molly Brown or something. She was on the Titanic. Yeah. Lots of people just survive lots of boat sinkings.
You just wouldn't step foot on another ship, would you?
No.
I reckon after one time, you'd be like, no, I would. One time, I would. If it happened a second time.
Second time, I'm not doing that.
I'm out.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm done.
Yeah. I have to agree with that.
Yep.
One time, whoopsie. Second time, I'm good.
That cat was also a traitor. You reckon if that cat went back?
I don't think the cat had anything to do with that decision.
Do you reckon if the cat went back to Germany? Are you
suggesting he was a Nazi spy? And on that bombshell, thank you for listening. John believes that cats are Nazi spies. If you hit us up on @CheekyTales on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, there will possibly be some images from each of these stories. There should be. I don't know what one of the crocodile one's going to be, considering it didn't happen.
An aerial view of the island.
That'll do it. Maybe just some jungle. Maybe a crocodile.
Just some random jungle.
I'll work it out.
Steve Irwin wrestling a croc.
R.I.P.
To an actual real one.
Yeah. I like how you looked at all 3 cameras there. That one can't see you.
I had to make sure that everyone...
John's not making fun of National Treasure Steve Irwin.
No way.
Anyway, thank you for listening. It has been lovely to speak to your ear holes again. We'll be back in another fortnight. Maybe we'll have Sean. Maybe we'll have producer Apollo again.
Into your ear holes.
Good night.
Good night, Chiquitos. That bombshell.